Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 yo, go, go, go. Hustle hard, hustle every single day. I'll be making moves till I'm buried in my grave. To the system, I don't wanna be a slave. I've been doing shit my way, or the highway. And in the driveway is a nice range. Cause I grind through the climb, I invite pain. You never hear me, bitch, nah, I don't complain. Just gotta flip the switch and you can go and obtain anything you want, anything you need. Your mind's got the key ingredient, it's belief. They'll deceive with the negativity, but I just slide right by that energy. Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 go. You got a mind, but even that could change. You could flip the gray matter like some batter in your brain. That's why I say, fake it till you make it A. And if you play that game, then you just might make a change. Rearrange all the bad to okay. Take the worst thoughts saying, turn them to a game. Take the best thoughts saying, put them on display. On repeat in your brain till you're feeling no more pain. Never slow yourself down, you can do some more. Push past all the pain and you'll find a door. Open it up and finally explore everything that you thought you could never do before. And even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 go. Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go.
I'm out of jail, everybody. I'm out of jail. They let me out. Can you believe it? Welcome back to the Real Greg Kelly Show. Been in jail for about 2 months, messing with YouTube. Them people will come to your house and get you without a warrant. Trust me. They want your freedom of speech. They not playing. Welcome, everybody. Anybody that's new, welcome to the family. Y'all know who you are. Hey, glad you're here with me tonight. So glad you're here with me tonight. I want to do things differently. I'm going to keep this stream short, straight to the point. But we're going to talk about fascism in a sense that it's operating right now, and we need to see it. I have issued a plethora of invitations for anybody to come on the stream. Democrat, liberal, Republican, independent. I want to talk to people because it's clear to me that a lot of people are really misinformed, man. It is really sad to know that so many people are just misinformed. Literally, I mean, they are really good people. They have really good intentions. They're just going the wrong way. They have a wrong perspective, a really ugly, dark perspective, and they have loyalties to a party that simply does not care about the American people. Put a 1 in the chat if you know that's a fact. I mean, look at the gas, look at the food, look at the shelves, man. Look at what's going on in the schools with the minor attractive people, the drag queens going to elementary school. Come on, y'all. Come on. So we're going to take a look at some things that will really put this in perspective. Like I said, I'm going to do things a little differently. I want to be formal. I just can't be formal. I have to be myself, but I'm going to try something different tonight. Whew, hopefully it works. Because I'm tired of fighting with people, tired of getting into these entanglements, these verbal entanglements, and still walking away with really nothing. I didn't really accomplish anything. I know anybody that's had a conversation with a liberal or a Democrat or just somebody that's from the opposing party, it's like talking to a brick wall sometimes. And so, again, the invitation is out. Anybody that wants to come on the stream, bring your facts. Let's have a factual-based conversation, not an emotionally charged one. That would break the ice, I believe. I think that would give us a chance to put things in perspective. But anyway, thank you for coming to the cockpit. We're going to blast off tonight. We're going to get into some really good information. Bear with me, though, because this is new for me. And again, I want to shout out the chat. We got Fetty in the house. AC is in the house. Joker's in the house. Nana's in the house. Nick's in the house. And for anybody that may be in the building that I have not talked to or acknowledged personally, thank you so much for being here tonight. You are going to be thoroughly enlightened. And as we're going through this, I want you to make your own comparisons to the things that we're going to look at tonight. This is only part 1. I will do part 2 next week. And I want you to, again, draw some conclusions, draw some similarities, point them out, write them down, and let's talk about it in a respectful way and in a way that can benefit a listener that may be on the fence, that may be on the other side. Let's try to give, they're our opposition, and I understand that there's a lot of tension in the air right now, but even that tension is by design. And it's my hope that by doing videos of this caliber, that we actually may be able to prepare an atmosphere that allows people to compare information. And let's just really see what's right and what's wrong. Let's try to, nail that down. Let's get into this. Again, thank you for joining me tonight on the Real Greg Kelly Show. Stay with us. Stay with us. This is going to be fun. I'll be right back.
Hey, what's up everyone? So today's video is going to be answering one question and one question only. And that is, what is fascism? Fascism has to be a strong contender for one of the most loosely understood words in the political lexicon. And in my opinion, that's probably not going to be changing anytime soon. But if you're someone that wants to develop a tighter understanding of it, this video is going to be targeted for you. To date, there have only ever been 2 governments that have even remotely uncontroversially been considered fascist. And those are the governments of Italy and Germany, established between World War I and World War II. Calling Germany fascist is slightly controversial, but I'm not going to get into that here. In my opinion, Nazi Germany was fascist, and I think that will become clear as I talk about it in the video. But either way, it shouldn't change my conclusions. You should be able to theoretically drop Germany from my analysis here, and my conclusions should still hold up. But I will talk about Germany in this video. So I'm going to mostly cover Italy first and Germany second, but I will to some extent go back and forth between the two for the sake of comparison. To the surprise of no one, this video will get dark. I'm not going to show anything very graphic, but I'm also not going to intellectually shy away from the subject matter either. And the subject matter will get dark, especially when we cover Germany. So if you're trying to, I don't know, go on a picnic or something after this, this might not be the video for you. But for the rest of us, we're going to cover Italy first and Germany second. And then at the end, we're going to circle out and see what we can say about fascism based on that. And yeah, that's the plan.
And as always, me and that mute button. Oh my God. Can we get the mute button situation squared away, please? But anyway, as I was saying, there's really no way to deny that there's been a resurgence of fascism / communism / Marxism. And now it's called progressivism. And it's nothing more than all of the old political structures of the past, all of their failures being rewrapped and called something different. This is what the Marxists, the communists, the fascists, and now the progressives, this is what they do. They consistently, repeatedly do it. And at this particular point, we've seen the maturation of their scheme. And, you know, what we were looking at now is a fascist movement called democracy or democratic movement that really has in its ideals a one-party government, where there is no such thing as bipartisanship. It's all about being partisan. Their one-party agenda and the leader, Joe Biden, they have been putting on full display fascism at its finest, at one of its highest levels. And, you know, just for the sake of giving some information about fascism, it's a political ideology that stands for big government, which is centralized government. And they don't tolerate dissent or opposition from within their own party or anyone from the opposing party or any independent media outlets. They don't tolerate dissent from anybody. They will silence you. They will attack you, your life, your lifestyle, your career. They will attack you. And they have a belief system in this particular fascist group that, you know, many want to call the Democratic Party. And again, they're communist, Marxist, fascist. They're all the same. They have an ideology and a thought process that says that in society, you know, there are highs and lows of classes of people, and they believe that the highest class of people should rule over that society. And when we look at fascism, what we're going to look at tonight, we're going to see that there are so many similarities between the rise of the fascist movement in America and the fascist movements of old throughout history, which is why we're going to look at Italy in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, particularly 1925 when Benito Mussolini comes into power. We're going to look at that because, for example, both of those movements are both fueled by economic anxiety. I mean, it's stressful. They crush the economy. They bring the people to their knees. And we're seeing that happen today in America. And they also desire to radically change the principles, the fundamental principles of our Constitution that have governed us since the founding of this country. And, you know, the people group of choice, or should I say their target group of choice, are the lower classes of people. And, you know, when it comes to the political spectrum, you know, most African Americans, you know, they look at, you know, the Democratic Party as the compassionate party along the political spectrum. And, they claim, the left, they claim to fight for the rights of African Americans and other minority groups, and they promote their causes by using social injustice as a foundation for their agenda. But they're very dangerous, man. I mean, their belief system is very dangerous, and it can be very extreme, while they're also at the same time calling their political opposition extremist. It's what we call doublespeak. Nevertheless, it's unbelievable the comparisons that could be made, and I want you to make these comparisons for yourself. So I'm not going to hold you here long, but I just want to lay the foundation. So when you're watching this and you're listening to how fascism was formed, you'll actually get an opportunity to see some of these same things, and you'll pay attention and be like, man, they're doing that now. We're witnessing this now. And again, this is back from the late 1800s. A great reset in the political world took place in the late 1800s. And propaganda is one of the main tools, and we're going to touch that. But the left have infiltrated mainstream media, man, and they enjoy an incredibly long reach into society as a whole. And man, they severely criticize any alternative broadcasting networks that may challenge or expose their agenda. They're not having it. They call it dissent. And we listened to President Joe Biden not long ago call people that support the MAGA Republicans, people that support, Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, this Republican Party, the real Republican Party as a whole. They're literally calling us domestic terrorists. So they'll label you as a terrorist while they unleash terror on society. And they're not the majority, but again, they can be very dangerous. And they really love to use violence and intimidation to accomplish their goals while accusing the opposition of being the violent ones. You got to see this. So tonight we are going to take a historic look at the roots of fascism. And we're going to get a really good perspective on how this form of government and those who brought it to its highest expression in the past, how they influence the leaders of our day right now. We're talking about the squad, even Joe Biden, the Pelosi's of the world, the Chuck Schumers of politics. We're going to look at how the ancient writings, this is ancient, 1800s, none of us were here, but these guys had a great influence on what we're witnessing today. All right, so let's get into this. This is the great political reset that took place right when Benito Mussolini took power. This is part one, fascism in America. Buckle your seatbelts. And please, if you see any comparisons, put it in the chat. I will take the time to address you. If you want to come on the stream, if you have anything you want to share, know that you are welcome to do so. Let me know on the chat. I will send you an invite. You are more than welcome. Again, I don't care what your political allegiance is. If you want to have a real, mature, adult discussion using facts as your premise and foundation, the floor is open. Fascism in America, part one.
So we're going to go back to the time and the place where fascism was invented, which was interwar Italy. After the March on Rome in 1922, Benito Mussolini came into power and became the face of fascism known around the world. Mussolini had a background in academia and considered himself something of a philosopher. We're going to get into Mussolini's ideas, but first I think we should get into some of his influences. And a good place to start with that is Gustave Le Bon, whose book The Crowd was of a special interest to Mussolini. By the end of the 1800s, the nature of politics seemed to be changing, and Le Bon believed that civilization was at a turning point. As he wrote, "While all our ancient beliefs are tottering and disappearing, while the old pillars of society are giving way one by one, the power of the crowd is the only force that nothing menaces, and of which the prestige is continually on the increase. The age we're about to enter will, in truth, be the era of crowds." What Le Bon is describing is the beginning of mass politics. It was a time when politics were getting less elitist and more populistic. So to gain political power in that context, people would have to spend less time targeting educated people and elites, and more time trying to win the support of everyday people, who would then express their support in a crowd. So he argued that that was making politics more simplistic and more homogenous. Le Bon believed that there was something like a psychological law of the mental unity of crowds, which is this idea that when individuals identify with crowds, they to some extent lose their ability to think for themselves, and they instead think with the crowd. So then you have a crowd of like-minded people, which can then be directed and influenced. So in this analysis, crowd psychology acts as a hypnotizer, and individuals in the crowd are hypnotized. So if an individual becomes swept up in a crowd, then all feelings and thoughts are bent in the direction determined by the hypnotizer. Le Bon believed that to sway a crowd didn't require telling the crowd the truth. What it required was telling the crowd what they wanted to hear and appealing to the crowd's emotions. As he put it, the masses have never thirsted after truth. They turn aside from evidence that is not to their taste, preferring to deify error if error seduce them. Whoever can supply them with illusions is easily their master. Whoever attempts to destroy their illusions is always their victim. So to gain power in the era of mass politics, it was thought that you would have to simplify your political ideas and win over a crowd of like-minded people that would then express support for them. The best way to do that wouldn't be to be concerned with truth, but rather to emotionally charge your ideas that can get the crowd excited, to tell them illusions that they want to hear. So this is already describing the core assumptions behind fascism. Mussolini believed that if the 19th century was the century of individualism, then the 20th century would be the century of collectivism. Mussolini thought that anyone who wasn't thinking in terms of collectivism and mass politics was going to be left behind in the 20th century. So by that, he mostly meant liberals who thought individualistically and conservatives who thought aristocratically. So Mussolini described that as dead energy. One thinker he thought did get it right, at least in that regard, was Karl Marx.
All right, so I hope you paid attention. There were certain things that really stand out to me, and we're going to look at them individually. Just a few points to take away from clip one. The first thing is looking at what Mussolini wanted to do after he invaded Rome. He wanted to take the type of action that would shock the culture, something that would totally transform the government. Now, we're going to make a quick comparison with that shock and awe movement that was made when we look at what Joe Biden did the first day he was in office, which is he shut down the oil in America. It would shift the American economy in a direction that would eventually, if it continues to go this way, it will crush America's economy, thus crushing America's future and financial prosperity. And again, folks, that's part of the plan. So when we're looking at Mussolini and we're looking at the moves that he took, the actions that he took, what we can see is that just like the Great Reset, that needed to be a great political reform, an economic reform, and a societal reform, then, and as it is now, and it's the exact same playbook. The plays are exactly the same. And they're going to use lies as a means of ushering in this new way of life, this new way of living. So the first thing is the fundamental practices of limited government are under attack right now. Limited government is what made America, America, not big government. And the Constitution is under attack. Your First, Second Amendment is under attack. Let me turn that down a little bit. The sacred pillars of America's society, America's morality is under attack. I mean, even the greatest scholars, they knew that it's the moral fabric of a nation that gives that nation its power. There is no real freedom without moral responsibility, without moral purity. So no wonder Christianity is under such attack in this country, It's because it is the foundation of everything that we call pure and moral. It's the foundation of it. And it's under severe attack right now. But let's touch this one, that's for sure. The philosophy of crowds, mass politics, lies, propaganda being used as a weapon to brainwash the masses. So the quote is, the power of the crowd is the force, the only force that nothing menaces. And all across the United States and across the globe, we're witnessing this fascist philosophy, of playing on the emotions of the masses play out in real time, with the rise of groups like Black Lives Matter, Antifa, Communist Party USA, Revcom, all of these organizations and all of these groups of people that hate America. They live here, but they hate America. And they're spreading like a disease all across the country, especially in college institutions and the public school institutions. And sadly enough, of course, we know it's CNN, MSNBC, the mainstream media outlets. This is what they're promoting and this is what they're pushing as they attempt to penetrate the minds and the hearts of American citizens, especially the younger of our time in our generation. And another quote, the age that we are about to enter will be the era of crowds, end quote. And, this idea, again, was born in the late 1800s, and people thinking that this is a new philosophy where we see rioting in the streets, we see mass looting, we see shootings, and we see mass violent protests that are being called peaceful protests. And the myth that they're selling is that, of course, we know that it's systemic racism. Everything is racist. Everything is called racist at this point. It's like, how is the issue of race so powerful in 2022 when African Americans and other minority groups and, legal immigrants have come to this country and have had great success? They've had great success, especially African Americans. Great success. But it could be that this philosophy of, mass politics, could it be that these are the offspring of those ancient guys, those older Germans and Italians that have made their way into all of our institutions? And they're thriving in our institutions, and they're thriving in positions of power in our country. They're thriving. And they're calling our way of life archaic. They're calling our belief system archaic and, no longer needed, obsolete. Hey, we progress beyond God. We progress beyond morality. But could it be that this tyrannical regime that's in power right now in America, could it be that they have found a better way? Well, this is what they've always promised: a utopian society, a better way of life. But if you're paying attention, I think we can easily and clearly see that our way of life under Joe Biden isn't better at all. Could it be that, the tyrannical regime that's in power, could it be somebody other than the ultra MAGA white supremacist alt-right Trump supporters or the Republicans? Because this is what they're saying, is that, hey, if we give Republicans power, they're going to take away your rights. Can anybody point the finger at any of the rights that have already been taken away under the guise of medical, necessity? It's a disguise, smoke and mirrors. Your fundamental rights as a citizen being taken away because of a disease or a sickness, never been done in history. Nothing has ever been done like this. But again, I think it's worth noting that the target of the extreme left, or their ideal candidate, for indoctrination, it always seems to be those in America who are in those lower classes, as they would consider lower classes. But it just refers to the everyday work, regular working class people that seem to suffer the most under these, regimes that promise, this great utopian society where everybody has everything in common. You'll have nothing, you'll own nothing, and you'll be happy. And they're selling to the American people that people like Donald Trump and people like me and you and I, who actually want to work hard and have whatever it is that we desire, that's actually racist. That's actually a way of life that's obsolete. So the new way of life only involves the government having absolute control over what you do. And when it comes to mob rule, this is the ultimate end game. They really want to bring in the type of government that rules the people and has a little police department. We'll call them the local snitches. And the game plan is so extremely well put together that it's almost impossible to keep up with it. The scheme, I know it has to find fuel to go on and find momentum, but the momentum seems to be deceit. They gain momentum, should I say, by using lies and deceit. So, normally in any normal society, morality, that's what gives freedom-loving people their momentum. You have more responsibility to do the right things. That's what your freedom is for. The truth is what fuels most of, freedom-loving Americans. That's what fuels most of their undertakings, but not in this movement. The fascist movement isn't at all concerned about telling or promoting the truth. No, they're after something far greater, far sinister. They think that lying is far more powerful than the truth. And now in this next segment, what we're going to look at is something very interesting. If you use the term nationalism now, you're definitely considered a white supremacist. But the message of fascism was actually nationalism. It was actually nationalism. It was something that the people could rally around. The problem with the promotion of nationalism in that time is that once the people rallied together and began to come together under that umbrella of nationalism and brought people like Mussolini and Hitler into power, they immediately turned into tyrants. They immediately turned into tyrants. Part 2, or clip 3, I'm sorry. We're going to look at nationalism. Just a concise explanation for nationalism. Stay with us.
The beginning of the 20th century, both of the original founders of classical Marxism had died, and adaptations of Marxism began to flourish. One major path of adaptations went from Marx to Lenin to Stalin and Mao, which is the path that we refer to as Marxism-Leninism. And the other major path went in a very different direction, and that began with George Sorel. Sorel was a heterodox Marxist who thought that it was too narrow to interpret the world through the lens of class and economics. And he thought that we should also look at sociology. So he thought that sociology would have an effect on the revolution. So he specifically thought that in order to create the ideological unity needed for the revolution, people would have to create mobilizing myths. These myths are stories that are supposed to contain all the strongest inclinations of a people, stories that people are inspired by and cherish and hold above criticism. The myth that Sorel chose was the myth of strikes. So Sorel tried to build up this mythology around the idea of strikes to get people to rally around the idea and to start the revolution. Italian fascists liked Sorel's ideas, but they adapted them. So to finish sketching out this path of adaptations, you have Marx, then Sorel, then Mussolini and Hitler, which is the path of fascism. Although unlike the path of Marxism-Leninism, by the time you get to Mussolini and Hitler, their ideas don't really resemble Marxism at all. And Hitler was even violently anti-Marxist, which is to say this is a messy chain of influences, and a lot of adaptation happened here. So to finish up the Marxist influence, fascists thought that Marxism movements correctly tapped into the spirit of mass politics. They told a simple story of a binary struggle between good and evil, where regular people were good and elites were evil, in particular financial elites. And within that, good people were deserving, especially deserving of political power. Hitler even tipped his hat to Marxism in that regard, saying, "No movement has operated with such a thorough knowledge of the characteristics of the masses as the Marxist movement," a point he elaborated on in Mein Kampf, saying, "The strong attractive power of the social democracy, yes, of the whole Marxist movement, rested in large part on the homogeneity and hence one-sidedness of the public it addressed. The more seemingly limited, indeed the narrower, its ideas were, the more easily they were taken up and assimilated by a mass whose intellectual level corresponded to the material offered," which in the context of Mein Kampf is actually kind of a backhanded compliment. He was arguing that this is a necessary component for a successful populist movement. But fascists thought that Marxist movements were fatally flawed and therefore likely to fail. To name a couple of reasons why: they were inherently divisive. They turned one part of the population against the other, working class against property owners. And they also tended to be dogmatic. They tended to rigidly adhere to Marxist ideas, whether they worked in practice or not. So fascists thought that thinking that would work was wishful thinking, and they thought that something new had to be thought up. As Mussolini said in his autobiography, it was necessary to imagine a wholly new political conception, adequate to the living reality of the 20th century, overcoming at the same time the ideological worship of liberalism, the limited horizons of various spent and exhausted democracies, and finally, the violently utopian spirit of Bolshevism. So they needed a galvanizing idea, an idea that crowds could rally around, something that excites people and binds them together. Something they thought wasn't doing that was internationalism. As Mussolini put it, "I saw that internationalism was crumbling. The unit of loyalty was too large." So he thought that internationalism wasn't an idea that people could feel passionate about and rally around. And here he is on the next page, following that to his conclusion. Facing this new situation, every political man, including myself, began to examine his conscience. The mere mention of this problem was sufficient to make clear and evident the hidden travail of national consciousness. I was transformed in my thought. So national consciousness replaced class consciousness and became fascism's Sorelian myth. As Mussolini said in a speech, "We have created our myth. The myth is a faith, a passion. It is not necessary for it to be a reality. It is a reality in the sense that it is a stimulus, is hope, is faith, is courage. Our myth is the nation. Our myth is the greatness of the nation." So what became the bottom of fascism, the mobilizing idea that became the bottom of fascist ideology, was a passionate nationalism. So Mussolini collaborated with a circle of Italian intellectuals, notably around the magazine La Voce, and notably with the philosophy professor Giovanni Gentile. And they worked to develop a language and theory of fascism around nationalism. So they created this myth around the nation and treated it not just as a territory, but something spiritual. And then they talked about the nation in as passionate language as they possibly could. To give a shorter example, look at Mussolini describing his national identity here. He doesn't just call himself Italian. He says, "I am desperately Italian." I don't know about you, but I think that's about as emotional as you can get when you're talking about your country. National identity is something that all citizens of a country technically share. So what fascism tries to do is it tries to stir up the emotions of the public to get them to unite and rally behind the idea. It tries to sway the crowd using the myth of the nation. Something that's distinct about fascism, something that separates it from other versions of nationalism, is that for fascists, their nationalism is an overriding principle. It overrides all other traditional or moral or political concerns. Going back to this Mussolini quote, "Our myth is the nation. Our myth is the greatness of the nation." And then look what he says next. "And to this myth, this greatness, which we want to translate into a total reality, we subordinate everything else." That's actually an accurate description of fascism. If the question is, what does a fascist say or do? And we're talking about Italian or German fascism here. The answer is whatever brings about the greatness of the nation. They say whatever they need to say, and they do whatever they need to do in order to bring about the greatness of the nation, at least in their minds.
The adaptations of Marxism. That's exactly what we're seeing in America today. We're watching this happen in our country. It's nothing more, once again, than the mixture of all of the past political structures and all of their failures wrapped up in a new package. The politicians of today have been educated in the art of destroying America, and they pledged with their very lives to seeing America's economy crumble and her people enslaved. And by using the age-old brainwashing technique called MK Ultra, the elite have hypnotized many Americans and have indoctrinated their children in government-funded public schools and universities. Right now in this country, there's a generation among us who hates the prosperity of this country and have joined forces with our greatest enemy. These mobilizing myths that they use and they say resonate with the people, at this point, it would just be fruitless to even attempt to list all the lies and all the myths that they tell, and it's being perpetuated through mainstream media. I wouldn't have any brain cells left, so I won't even try. You know, the issues of race and economic class is going to exist forever because there will always be less fortunate people in the earth. You know, there will always be those, you know, perennial prophets of extreme hatred, despair, and victimhood. And these are the areas in which the left seeks to dominate and control. What they're really after is the hearts and minds of the American people. I mean, they'll tell you things like the capitalist system is racist. But if you work hard and work consistently, you can have anything you want in this country. And enough said about that. I mean, that's just a fact. They'll tell you that the education system is racist. Well, if that's the case, and that's so, I mean, which racial group is the target? You know, I went to school with white kids, Mexican kids, black kids, Filipino kids, kids from many different ethnic groups. And yet there are people who will tell you that the black kids are not afforded the same education that white kids are. So what's happening if that's the truth? I mean, are African Americans going to segregated schools and, you know, black kids are put in a separate class and taught a different curriculum? I mean, it's an absurd accusation, but there are many social injustice advocates who will tell you that this is a documented truth, that they can, you know, statistically prove this, which I still don't know how that's possible, but this is what they'll say. And to put it nicely, it's a myth used to stir the emotions of the uninformed. You can't stir the emotions with this rhetoric with people who are informed and, you know, have two good eyes, working eyes. You can't really use this nonsense. But, you know, here's just a few more of these, you know, emotionally mythical lies. Starting with this point, women are oppressed. You know, history is racist. America owes African Americans reparations. Anybody that supports Donald Trump is a racist and a threat to democracy. You know, we don't live in a democracy, by the way. We live in a republic. I still don't know when that changed. Needing a state ID to vote is racist. And I guess the question that we need to ask is, why are all these myths being used as weapons against the human psyche anyway? And AC put it in the chat earlier. They want to divide the people. I think it was Fetty, I'm sorry. They want to divide us. And when you divide a people, you create the atmosphere for totalitarian government. So what are we seeing today? Is it a fascist movement? You be the judge. You tell me whether or not we're witnessing fascism / communism / Marxism slash progressivism, are there any similarities to these governmental structures of old that have failed over and over and over again? Are we witnessing this take place in our country right now? If you have any idea, let me know in the chat. I'm still shocked, but the truth is the truth. The people that are running our country do not love this country, and they're doing their very best to lead us to slavery. But again, this is also the party that said that they ended slavery. But what really baffles me is that I had a Democrat, a liberal, I don't know which one, he's probably both, told me that MAGA equaled Jim Crow, as though the American people don't know without a doubt that it was the Democratic Party that brought about the Jim Crow laws. It was the Democratic Party that brought about the beginnings of the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, we know that it was the Democratic Party that did not want to end segregation. This is common knowledge, America. But their propaganda is so extreme and it's so well put together. And they do it so consistently. They lie so consistently and so effortlessly, by the way, that so many people are beginning to believe the myth that women are oppressed and history is racist and the school system is racist. The institutions are racist. And if you let them tell it, everywhere you turn, there's a racist. And if you're black and you believe what they tell you, then you're forced to believe that there's absolutely nothing you can do to change the course of your life unless you empower the government to do it for you. And there's a word for that. It's called slavery. The very premise, the core idea of America is that people could do what they wanted to do with their lives, be as successful as they wanted to be. But now there's a whole entire generation of black people who do not believe they can be successful because someone told them that in order for them to be successful, capitalism had to die and America needed to become a socialist country, which is nothing more than a communist country. I do want to thank you for tuning in tonight. Again, I wanted to be brief, but I wanted to be effective. If you have any similarities that you saw, if you place them in the chat, again, it may not be right this moment, but I will respond to you because I want to create a dialogue. I really do. I really want to talk to people on either side of the aisle and assist them and let them assist me as well. I'm sure there's some things I don't know, but there are things that are clear and evident. The people that are in power in this country do not love the Constitution. They do not want the Constitution to govern this free country. They want to change our Constitution. And they want to disarm us so they can rule and dominate us. So there you have it. Fascism in America, Part 1. I'll be back next week. And next week, we will get into Part 2. And I think it's only fair and it's only right to leave you with this. If you love this country, you love your family, and you love God, you are an enemy of the state. Point blank, bottom line. But I do want to say, don't be intimidated. No, don't back down. Don't take the knee. Stand up. Because if you stand up, the fight's still on. If you take a knee, it's over. Thanks for watching. I'll be back next week. They let me out of jail, man, and I'm excited about it. Okay? Want to give a shout out to my family in the chat. Fetty is still with me. I see it. Brooke, Nick, AC, John Lovin. I think Nana said she was listening, but she was doing so. Hey, Taylor, I didn't even see you, girl. Everybody that decided to stop by Unique Prepping, thanks for joining me. If you haven't liked the channel already, please give me a thumbs up. It helps me get through these algorithms. And if you know anything about this show, man, the algorithm don't like me very much. And if you haven't subscribed, look, give me a sub. It's a blessing. I'm trying to get, more and more influence so I can reach more and more people. And you giving me a thumbs up, you giving me a sub actually works a lot. Goes a long way. Y'all know what I'm going to do, right? I'm going to sign off. I love you. I'm in the cockpit. This is the spearhead of the gospel, man. This is the truth that we talking here. We're talking the truth here. And the door's still wide open. Anybody that wants to come and have a conversation with me, bring your facts. Let's do it, man. Let's stop sitting behind the keyboard, talking trash to one another, disrespecting one another. We claim to love the same country. So let's find out where we're going wrong as a people. Let's try that. I'm going to sign off. I love you guys. It's the Real Greg Kelly Show. I'll be back next week. Until then, man, keep loving God. Love your family. Love your children. Love each other. I love you guys. I'm signing off. Until next time. Peace.